The following program contains a topic which may not be suitable for young viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
It's not always easy to talk about relationships and intimacy. With a spinal cord injury, it may require an even higher level of communication, trust, and honesty. However, it's important to talk openly, both to dispel myths and to establish shared goals and expectations. On this episode of Underestimated, presented by Oatley Vigman Personal Injury Lawyers and brought to you by Spinal Cord Injury Ontario, we are opening up about relationships and intimacy. I visit Scott Wollin at home in Keswick to talk about his experience with dating as a person with a disability in a town of 30,000 people and a public transit system that stops at 6. Oda heads to the Corner Comedy Club in Toronto to meet comedian Blair Williams, who uses comedy to raise awareness about difficult and taboo topics. And I visit with Gary and Kristy Luker in Stoney Creek. 22 years ago, Gary and Kristy got married in the hospital after Gary broke his neck 6 days before their wedding. They share their fertility journey after spinal cord injury.
My name is Scott Wollin, and I am a C6 quadriplegic. I was injured when I was 20 years old, and I'm 35 now. I live in Keswick, and it's a small commuter community by the lake. Living in a small town is sometimes complicated. There's not a great transit system. So we do have a transit system, but it's, few and far between, and doesn't run late at night. So sometimes getting around by myself in an independent way is not the easiest thing to do, but I've got some good people that don't mind picking me up and throwing me in their truck or whatever. So that's not the worst thing, but it's quiet. Online dating as an adult, and I can only answer this as somebody who's been in a wheelchair the whole time. Online dating is complicated for a bunch of reasons. I think it's inherently shallow, okay? So I think that when you have a visible physical disability, people are looking at your profile or your first picture, and immediately they can see physical barriers. Online dating with a disability is you have your baggage presented before you've even met the person, instead of actually getting to meet the person and figuring out, whether or not you're a fit or not. Or what is dating like now versus before my injury? Okay, well I don't want to pump up my tires, but I did pretty well with dating before my injury. It came very naturally to me. Very personable, so I was able to get out and meet people and meet their families, and I did quite well. I didn't have a problem with dating prior to my accident. Since my accident, you're met with problems that I didn't have before. Body image issues, confidence issues, not wanting to embarrass myself with somebody new kind of thing. One thing that I have learned is you can't, or shouldn't anyway, try to love somebody else if you don't love yourself, okay? So being okay with who you are after your injury or your physical condition or whatever, I think is the single most important thing that somebody in my situation would do or has to do in order to make that next step. Because if you're not okay with yourself, I promise you she is not going to carry that or make that a reality, and you're just going to, it's not going to last. So loving yourself is, I would say, number one. What helped me love myself was a lot of time, a lot of probably self-imposed frustration and anger, and realizing that that is a way to exist, but not a way to move forward with your life. Here's an example of a good date that I thought was going to be bad, or I thought that because of what happened in the middle of the date made it bad. And anyway, so I'll try to tell you. So I ended up peeing in this girl's car on our second date, and she was very understanding and okay with the situation kind of thing. And she was actually able to really calm me down about being upset with myself over, you know, I'm embarrassing myself kind of thing. And that was a very positive experience, because it was like, listen, she's an adult. It's, you know, this thing happens, unfortunately, with, you know, my injury, and she was okay with it. And I went home and I was like, you know, I really felt appreciated still having my spinal cord injury, right? I was appreciated for being me, right? And that was a really big, you know, positive, right? A fun date around here is, honestly, I live 2 minutes from the lake, and, you know, like a nice bike ride and that kind of thing. I hook up to my electric scooter, and she can be on rollerblades or a bike. And I mean, just the other night I took my dog Winston out, and we had a great time, and she appreciated it, and she felt like I was sort of participating in her workout, and she was participating in my, you know, my nightly dog walking kind of thing. And it was just a very nice, positive bike ride. It's nice. My advice to somebody in my situation would be, try not to take yourself so seriously, or try not to take life so seriously, because nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody's just kind of making it up as they go, and you're going to feel pressures that you think are injury related, but they are probably just life related, and other people are going through those same things too. And yeah, be kind to yourself. It's hard, but yeah.
Listen, buddy. Listen, you're...
It's all good. It's all good.
How he's not moving.
I'm here at the Corner Comedy Club in downtown Toronto, one of the few accessible comedy clubs in the city with an elevator and an accessible bathroom. I'm here today to talk to Blair Williams, aka Blair the Handy, who's a sit-down stand-up comic. He uses comedy to raise awareness as well as flex his advocacy muscles.
Blair the Handy!
Hi, my name is Blair Williams. I'm 47 years old. Recently got into comedy back in November of 2023. There's not very many comedy clubs in the city, so I got lucky to come here to the Corner Comedy Club. I was in a play in high school. It was a two-person play, and it was a comedy drama. And that's where I got the bug for making hundreds of people laugh and feeling that energy coming from the crowd. Then I wanted to get into comedy, but, you know, most clubs I looked at, they're all inaccessible, and, you know, I don't want to do comedy in a restaurant or in a bar, because most of the time people that are there are really not there for the comedy. They may have just said, oh, we're gonna go for dinner, and the next thing you know, there's an open mic there. So I'd rather do comedy in a comedy club, and as I said, there's only really 2 accessible clubs in the city.
I'd love to know how you use comedy to raise awareness, especially for things like that lack understanding, like sexuality and disability. I think what you do in your comedy raises awareness, and how do you feel about it?
So I start every set the same. I say something like, yeah, it still works. And then that breaks the ice. I think it gets people, into the show a little bit more.
Whoever wants to touch it, you can touch it. You can talk to me after. I'm game. I was 12 the first time I made my penis cry.
So making fun of yourself eases situations with people, I find. So if I make a light joke about, my inabilities or my abilities.
Turns out breaking your neck makes you bisexual.
It opens more conversation for people.
You don't know something until you know something, and when someone says, I'm disabled and I can have sex, you're like, oh.
Yeah,
okay.
and like 3/4 of the time, it's women who end up asking me, like, does it work, right? Like, you figure that it'd be a guy thing to ask another guy that, but in my experience, it's generally women that ask it first before men. It's an easy way of educating people, is the way I look at it. Right? You could make it an awkward conversation, or you can make it a funny one. And I think everybody's a lot more receptive to a funny conversation than a serious, awkward one.
For sure.
And then I let it sit there for a minute and let people catch on. And I had a gentleman the other time that I could see it in his face, and it took a few minutes for it to click. And then once it did, his eyes got big, and he started laughing, and he kind of hid behind his wife. And I started playing with him. I'm like, don't worry about it, buddy. I can show you next time. I can prove it to you.
Is that still getting jerked off, or is that fingers?
Can you share an example of a joke or a routine that you use?
Yeah, so when I broke my neck, C5-6 level, it affects the dexterity in your fingers, so I don't have any finger dexterity, so I have to kind of like smush it between my two fists, and I do this awkward thing like this, and it's like I'm giving myself a foot job. If we don't talk about things, then people stay uneducated or ignorant, I will say to it, right? We need to talk about things. We can't say that's off limits or this is off limits.
And comedy is a perfect vehicle for that.
Exactly. And at the same time, you can see people click into, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, yeah, it's important to be able to go out to a comedy club or a restaurant and have an accessible bathroom. Oh, I never thought of that, right? Because I'm so open with it, it doesn't bother me, it doesn't affect me. Like I'll like answer anybody's question, no matter how, quote unquote weird it may be. Like, how do you pee? Well, this is how I pee. Like I've had that in a routine too, where I explain to everybody about, wearing a condom catheter, wearing, a leg bag, and how it all works. And I tell them how at first I was very embarrassed to wear a condom and a leg bag. I didn't want anybody to know about it. I didn't want anybody to hear about it or see it especially. And then one day I was sitting on the DVP with my father and brother-in-law, and we were in traffic, and both of them at the same time said, God, I hope this lights up. I have to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, boys, I'm going to the bathroom right now.
It's happening as we speak.
That's it. Yeah. The benefits of being a handy. The comedian community are amazing people. All of the comics. Huge hearts. I was at a club one time, here, I was at the corner, and I looked down and my leg bag's full, and I'm like, okay, I got a 911 here, right? And I didn't, there was nobody around that's ever done it before. I'm gonna have to teach somebody. And I'm like, okay, I looked at this one guy and I'm like, I know he's really super cool. So I just went over to him and told him, like, hey, this is what we need to do. And he's all freaked out, and we're in the bathroom. And anyways, it was a little awkward or whatever, but it had to be done, right? Because if it wasn't, it's just a great community of people. I think as far as being open and accessible as in my way of life, comedians by far way more open to my like lifestyle and learning, right, about the lifestyle. I don't know, maybe they're trying to get a bit out of it, who knows, right? But that's what everybody does, right? So I'm looking forward to the day when society treats and looks at people with disabilities as equals. Now, we're looked as a hindrance most of the time. Oh, you're holding the bus up extra time because you want to get on. Oh, you're holding the streetcar up because you want to get on. Oh, we have to make this accessible just because you want to go out. Like, it still kind of blows my mind that in 2024, like, I can tell on the street when people are looking at me or when people are looking at me, right?
Staring versus looking.
Yes, and in bewilderment that, like, I'm out in the public, right? And it blows my mind that in 2024 that still exists, right? And again, I believe through comedy and through laughter, we can educate everybody about people with disabilities and just make it, yeah, okay, I'm a little different than you, but, you know, I still have the same wants, hopes, and desires that you have. I just have to go about it a little differently.
I broke my neck in 2002, diving into shallow water, 6 days before our wedding. We're coming up to 22 years, accident and marriage, obviously.
Yep.
So.
And we were married at the General Hospital here. We kept the same date.
Right.
We didn't want to change it.
After the injury we got married, yeah.
I do remember that we were excited to get married, and the chaplain at the hospital was encouraging us to wait. And he just said, love can wait, but we didn't want to wait. There was no reason. We'd been engaged for 2 years, dating like 6 years at that point. And as I had said to Gary, like, my criteria for a husband wasn't walking, so we didn't know what we were waiting for. It just felt like inevitably putting something off. So we had known we had wanted children before we got married. Like, that was the discussion we had had with each other. So when we were actually at the hospital the night Gary broke his neck, that was one of the first questions I asked of the physicians is, will he be able to have children? To which they told me no. I think they gave safe responses, right? Like, they can't tell you yes, because every spinal cord injury is so distinctly different and unique. So, like, reflecting back now, I know why they gave the responses. But we were pretty much from the get-go. I mean, once we settled on, we lived with my parents for a bit and kind of got settled. He was in rehab for 6 months once we got home. A year to the date of his injury was when we first started the testing at the hospital to see if Gary could get sperm, because that was the number one thing we needed to figure out.
I had to produce a sample, and the only way, like, the plumbing doesn't work the same anymore, so it doesn't work normally, so it had to be, and I didn't know if it would even work at the time, it had to be a vibrator, and it had to be a powerful vibrator.
My job that day was to catch the sample, which, like, I just giggled. Like, you know, when it's an awkward situation, like, I was just giggling, like, here's two other women manipulating my husband, and my job is to catch a sample. Like, it was too comical, yet really important life stuff all at the same time. Like, it was just bizarre.
It wasn't the foursome I was dreaming about.
No.
It was been a year since I had ejaculated, so needless to say, the sperm count was not good, but I didn't take that to mean anything, so I had to practice at home. We ended up at a fertility clinic, and obviously they all focusing on me, and we had to produce a sample with them, and she would bring it in, and they would do what they call a sperm wash, and it was an IUF.
IUI. So the first procedure we did was an IUI, and that was because we can't, like, Gary can't ejaculate if he's inside me, so it's separate. So it's how do we get to the sperm inside of me? So because they use the IUI, they say that they want to make sure they only have good sperm, so we do the sperm wash, do the IUI. We did about 5 of them. We did quite a few, and they were all
more than that.
very, very, obviously very unsuccessful, which was very trying. Like we had at one point asked one of the fertility doctors, like, okay, we know I make eggs. We know he has sperm. We know it's viable. They've told him it's stellar. Like, he tells everybody that. So, like, we just need to figure out what happens after with my body. So I remember we were really lucky. It was Dr. Edward Hughes was a supply doctor. He's a real doctor, but he was covering for a colleague. And I had never met him before, and he was just a really good listener. And he's like, well,
no, you read a book.
I read a book, and then I explained to him, I'm like, what I'm reading sounds like I have luteal phase defect. And he's like, if that's what you feel, then we can try treatment for that. And so we tried it the 1 month, and then the second month we were pregnant with Ryan.
Second try for both of them.
Second try, yeah. Like,
and both times I got the call, and both times I told her she was pregnant. So. Thankfully, I'm driving now. Like I started driving back in 2011. So, but so many times, like last night, I was with the boys in Kitchener for a baseball tournament, or not tournament, the game, and she was back here. She couldn't get there in time, right? So that's what we do. We divide and conquer usually. But the youngest now doesn't play baseball in the summer, so our summer is a lot better. He still probably has something 3-4 times a week for sure, but it's doable. You know, there's actually weekends where we have off sometimes in the summer now. It's great.
They're 13 and 16, so and what is really nice too is we ended up ironically having kids around the same time as many of our friends did too. So there's not really a huge age difference amongst our kids and our friends and their kids. So we do a lot of things with our really good friends that are couples, and the kids go along for everything. So everybody's all part of the package.
It's starting to change as they get a little older now.
Because they're hitting 18, 19, but there's a good chunk of time where everybody did.
But that's fine. The adults are happy to gather together. The kids want to stay home. It is what it is now.
And it's nice because then when we end up at activities where Gary might need lifted or placed in, we have a good group of friends. And we do a lot of hosting here in this space so that, again, access to a washroom, don't have to be carried in, all of those kind of pieces.
It's tough. They would always ask for Mommy, because Mommy did most of the stuff back in, right? If she had to go see him in the middle of the night, or I remember one of them losing it, and I go to get him out of their car seat in the van. No, Mommy, do it, right? But it took a couple of years, and then now Daddy was more involved. I had a vehicle too and stuff like that. But those were a little bit tougher. You know, when I hear them crying for Mommy and it's not Daddy.
But
right?
now in sports, they think Mom knows nothing. They want Dad's opinion on their bowling shots or baseball. I don't know if there's ever a conversation on how we divide it. The kids have naturally understand that we have different strengths as parents and gravitate to us for those things.
And I don't work, so I essentially just play tennis for a living. If anything, if I can do it, I'm doing it to take something off her plate, basically. So for the most part, I'm the driver when it's sports. You know, I don't get a lot of sympathy from these guys, I'll tell you that.
That's actually part of the best part, is they treat them like every kid treats their dad. They're it's how it's supposed to be, I think.
That's all they know. And when you do have kids, they adapt to you.
Oh gosh,
they'll climb on you, they'll do whatever. I remember changing the youngest's diaper the one time on a chair, and my chair dipped down, and my back wheels were in the air, and I knew if I pushed away from the couch that I was going down. And I think he was 2 years old, and I'm like, Evan, get up, can you come? And he figured it out. He came around and grabbed my chair and pushed it down. And I'm like, thank you. So they're resilient. They figure it out.
We did worry, at the beginning, even when the kids started school, would other kids say anything about their dad being in a wheelchair? And we were preventative about it. We went and volunteered in both their kindergarten room, bringing in wheelchairs, playing wheelchair tennis, reading books. But in the end, I don't think we even needed to do any of that.
It's more mainstream now, wheelchairs. You see them all the time, right, in shows and stuff like that. So
it doesn't even bat an eye. Our moms are a huge integral part of our life, like his and mine. And
Still are, but at the beginning, way more.
Yeah.
Her mom helping babysit. They gave us their van back in the day. It's like you can't. And we originally moved in with her mom after my accident until we had this house built. And then my mom moved in after we had the house built, and she's been like everything.
she's on, like she's our grounds.
Everything
she does
you
amazing
see
stuff,
on-
like to
on-
balance
on our-
out what we
outside
need
our
to do to live. Yeah.
Outside our property is all her.
Yeah.
The grass, everything's all her. So.
It's a village. So our children are raised by a village.
Thank you for watching this episode of Underestimated, presented by Oatley Vigman Personal Injury Lawyers and brought to you by Spinal Cord Injury Ontario. Thank you to our guests for being open, vulnerable, and sharing their experiences with us. As in any sexual relationship, an open, honest, and non-judgmental approach helps each partner to ask questions, express their thoughts, and listen carefully without the worry of being criticized or corrected. SCIO and Cortree have a variety of resources on sexual health and intimacy. To learn more, visit sciontario.org and cortree.com. I'm Tory Bowman, and we'll see you next time.